time building ground relationships with people who could guide me safely, get me into mining areas safely, who I could put my life in their hands and know that they were going to use good judgment. So it's about trust and relationships on the ground, first and foremost. And then, through those relationships, I was able to get into deep into the mining areas, mines that are controlled by militias, mines that are controlled by the Republican Guard. I mean, you have every face and facet of gigantic industrial mines. They're as big as a European city, and then just swaths of open terrain that are being dug up by local villagers. You have everything down there. But the ones that are most heavily guarded, the big mines, some of them I never got into. Try as I might, I could never. There's always they call FARDC, the army down there, and they're just guys with Kalashnikovs. There'll be 50 of them at the entranceway, and I never got in, but I would talk to the people who worked there, back in their villages, and some of the industrial mines I did get into, and of course the open terrain artisanal sites I could get to. But it's all about. I had to be very careful. Fortunately, there are a good number of Indians in the Congo, so I could blend in and didn't really stick out. So that helped in my movements in the mining provinces. I traveled very lean. Oftentimes we'd have to move in a hurry from one place to another, one village to another. Everything I was willing to leave behind. I had my passport Velcroed to my calf muscle, if we had to go in a hurry, and once or twice we did, that I needed that. Everything else is expendable, but you don't want to get stuck in the Congo without your documents. The number of checkpoints. I said there's just one road, and that thing is so heavily guarded, and the number of checkpoints. Just you pull up. Let me see your documents. Let me see this. Let me see that. Go through your bags. Go through your stuff, and then move along. Eventually, you might have to offer someone. They call it a cold drink. If you give me a cold drink, I can go through. First time someone said that to me, I said, "No, where the hell do we get a cold drink out here? We're in the middle of nowhere." No. Cold drink means peage, toll.
That's interesting euphemism.
Yeah. So. I had to rely on local contacts to get around and use my own experience and judgment about how far to push and when not to push.
What did you use as an excuse to be there?
So I had a range of cover stories when I'd go into mining areas. As I mentioned, there's some Indians down there. Some of them are mineral traders. Some of them are laborers. Many of them run hotels and guest houses. So I could be Indian guy looking to get into mineral trading, looking to invest in transportation. There's so much need meaning industrial need to get trucks and transport all this stuff that's coming out of the ground, out of the country and up the supply chain. With colleagues or government officials that I met, I was myself, which is a researcher from America. I was upfront about it, and I needed to be. There are times when I needed stamps and signatures of government officials to keep myself safe. And by that I mean, in the worst possible scenarios where I'm in a remote mine and there's some guys with Kalashnikovs and machetes coming after me. One of the first things my guide said is, we need to get the stamp and signature of someone from the governor's office on your documentation so we can show that. Because that means you've got permission, you're under the watchful eye of the governor, and so they can't kill you, they're just going to send you away. And that advice saved my life on more than one occasion. Having that stamp and signature. And so with government people, I was who I was. With NGOs, I was who I was. When I got into mining areas, to get access or to get into cobalt marketplaces, I would maybe be a mineral trader or some investor or someone looking to help transport minerals, and but yeah, those are my stories.
So as you entered into this world, were you aware that you needed all these signatures? How did you go about getting
No,
them?
I had no idea. So one of my guides on my first trip, before we went into the cobalt, into the mining areas, you land into a town called Lubumbashi, which is the head of a province called Haut-Katanga province, old colonial town. Now it's the mining capital in the southeastern part of the country. So that's where, there's some government buildings. And as I talked through my plan, what I wanted to try to achieve, what I wanted to try to see, my very first guide said, okay, we need to go and you have to explain this to someone in the governor's office and hope that they'll give you their signature and stamp on, it's called engagement de prise en charge, commitment to protect, documentation. And he said, just go and make the case and try to get that stamp and signature, because we'll need that. We may need that. If you want to go into these places, that will save your life. And he was right. On that very first trip, I was in a mining area north of a town called Kambove. Kids everywhere. We had done our sort of recon that it was clear of militias that day. There was always planning when I went into these areas, pre-planning, to minimize risk. And I was talking to some kids. There was two girls. They're probably 14 and 15, and they each had babies on their backs as they were in this trench digging cobalt. And I was walking down the trench to a group of boys. So one boy has a T-shirt that said AIG. And I thought to myself, first of all, that there's an AIG T-shirt out here, blew my mind. And I remembered, that was one of the big financial companies that had to be bailed out in the 2008 financial crisis, $150 billion or something. And I thought, man, that kind of money here, what a difference it could make. Anyway, so I was talking to those kids, and suddenly there was gunshots. And they knew what was happening. They all jumped into a trench. And I turned around, it was me and my guide, and there's a pack of guys with Kalashnikovs, machetes, running at us. And these militias operate in little units. There'll be a guy, the head of the group, and then there's maybe, 10, 15 guys. They call them militia, they call them commandos, various names. So they started coming at us, and immediately started roughing me up, grabbed my backpack, threw my stuff on the ground, started kicking us around, demanded to see my phone to see if I was taking photos. They know that there are people who are trying to figure out what's the truth around here. And